Back in the winter, in the dark days of winter, myself and the volunteers were having our lunch break in the kitchen over in the main house, and I was flicking through some old books and I stumbled across a publication from the 1940s called Dear Housewives by Doris Grant. Our edition of the book was bought by Mrs. Olive Pakenham Mahan in 1954, and in the book, Mrs. Grant has a lot to say about the diet of the general population in the post-war years. Amongst her many declarations on the state of food at the time of writing, she exclaims, "Be your own baker. To give your family real bread is one of the best and most immediate ways of counteracting our present synthetic national diet." So that's 70 years ago. And we were wondering what she might think of the state of food nowadays. But around this time, one of our volunteers, Koch, had told me how she and her husband had sown and harvested rye and wheat on a small plot on their farm near Roscommon town. They milled their grains and she baked bread from their own flour. So I thought, well, why not give it a go here? Let's see if it's something we can do at Strokestown to grow, harvest, mill and bake our own bread. And so this was going to be a project for the volunteers to really get stuck into this year. In March, the Creative Ireland funding opportunity came along and we were able to secure the finance for the project. So we decided to grow oats and wheat along one of the south-facing walls in the garden, but we had a lot of weeding to do to get the ground ready. Unfortunately, this year winter went on really long, and it wasn't until the end of April that the ground was warm enough for us to put the seeds in. I've emails back and forth to our grain supplier who said that everybody in the country was in the same boat, and so not to worry too much. So eventually by the end of May we were able to get our first section of garden sown with wheat. A lot of the volunteers were involved in this process. We had to make sure that we had netting down over the seeds to stop the birds from eating everything. One of our volunteers, Ala from Ukraine, made a mother and daughter scarecrow pair, and so between the netting and the scarecrows we were able to keep the birds away, and the seeds germinated after a couple of weeks and we had a really good thick crop of wheat and oats. The month of June was really, really warm this year. We had to water the seeds 2 or 3 times a day. But then when July came, it rained for the month. So we were in a little bit of a panic. We thought that maybe it was too cold and too wet and that the crop might fail. So there was a kind of an understanding of the anxiety when there's the possibility that your crop might fail. So we kind of reflected on that, considering the nature of the museum here at Strokestown and the Famine Museum here.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good indeed.
Hi. In August, the rain eased off a little bit. It got a little bit warmer. Our crop took a while to kind of ripen. It was green up until August into September, and slowly it started to ripen kind of in stages. The first batch of seeds that had a 2-week growth ahead of the second batch. Some of our seeds went in about 2 weeks earlier than others, and so you could really see the difference in how they ripened that little bit quicker. By September, most of the wheat had ripened and we were able to harvest that September time, mid-September. We got sickles from our old gardening shed here and from the gardening museum, sharpened them up and went out and harvested by hand. So again, a lot of the volunteers got into that. Everybody gave a hand, and we cut everything. It was a pretty quick process. We cut our wheat, tied it all into sheaves and dried it all out in our glass house. So everything was laid across kind of a wire rack up off the ground to keep the mice away from it. And it's a really warm space there, so the wheat and oats dried out quite quickly, and in a couple of weeks we were able to flail the sheaves of wheat and to winnow it. And within a couple of weeks of that, well, within a couple of weeks of harvesting, we were able to mill and we had flour. So that was great.
I was impressed with how simple it all was, really. It's doable. I thought it was much more complicated to grow your own grain and make flour.
Yeah, I thought that because
it's very labour intensive.
It was labour intensive, but everything we did by hand. Yeah. You know, we didn't need a machine for anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, apart from the baking of it, which obviously needs some heat, it was just sort of, you know, physical labour really.
And there's the satisfaction in seeing something from start to finish.
Yes. And we're about to eat it, so that will be the real test. You know, I'm sure it'll be very, very good.
We had some last year, which was a good year to have it because the summer was very good. So the ripening of it was wasn't a problem, but a lot of hard work. We had a bigger size than here now in Strokestown, maybe 3 or 4 times what was planted here, and it was all cut with the sickle and brought back to the house, and we laid it out cleaned off a yard and laid it out on like tarpaulin, and it was driven over with a small mini tractor, so to
that's
release
how you
the grain,
separated it.
and then winnowed
And that was wheat?
wheat. Yeah.
How much bread did you get out of it? Did you?
We got 50 kilos. I cannot tell you what
50
area
kilos of
we put in, but we got 50 kilos of flour. Like the wheat here doesn't have the gluten that's really needed for good bread making, you know.
Really?
So I would add other flour.
Why is that? Is that the variety or is it
It's more the climate.
the climate?
Yeah, it's more the climate here.
The one thing it probably demonstrates, if you didn't know this already, is that although we take it for granted that we just buy bread, the whole process is fairly straightforward. Mm-hmm. As long as you take it step by step, you can get there yourself.
No.
I thought there must have, or I expected there to be some complicated process between the wheat coming from the plant to the actual flour, but it wasn't.
It is a lot of effort, but the satisfaction is worth it.
Yeah,
If you're into that, mindset of being self-sufficient and knowing that if there is a food shortage, or if the way the world is going now with wars, etc., we're not importing or not able to import meat anymore, we could do it.
Well, it is in the Second World.
Mm.